At my baby shower, my mother-in-law stood up and declared, "I'll be naming this baby, you have no say." My husband nodded, "Mom knows best." I took out a birth certificate and said, "Actually, it's already decided." They panicked because I should have seen this coming. From the moment I married Victor, I knew his mother, Velma, had a way of inserting herself into every aspect of our lives. She wasn't just controlling, she was the kind of woman who expected people to fall in line with whatever she said. And Victor? He always did. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. If she wanted to pick the curtains for our living room, fine. If she insisted we serve a specific brand of wine at our wedding, whatever. I had bigger things to worry about. But when I got pregnant, everything changed. She saw this baby as hers. Not as my child, not as our child, hers. She treated my pregnancy like a group project where she was the leader and I was the assistant. She decided which doctor I should see. "Oh no, dear, you must go to Dr. Campbell. He's the only one I trust." She told me how I should eat. "You need to stop worrying about weight gain. Eat more red meat. You're carrying my grandchild." She tried to control my birth plan. "You'll want a C-section. You'll be too exhausted to push. I'll be in the delivery room to make sure they do it right." I told Victor the first didn't like it. He just shrugged and said, "She means well." I let a lot of things slide. But then came the baby shower. Liana, my best friend, threw it for me at a beautiful banquet hall. She put so much effort into every little detail, soft pink decorations, a gorgeous 3-tier cake, candles on every table. It was perfect. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control. Then Velma stood up. She tapped her fork against her glass, smiling like a queen about to make a royal decree. "Now that we're all here, I have an announcement," she said. I already knew it would be bad. "My grandson's name will be Montgomery James. We'll call him Monty." Silence. I felt the eyes of every guest shift toward me. A few people laughed nervously, waiting for me to say something. Surely, this was a joke. Victor, sitting beside me, didn't even hesitate. He nodded. "Mom knows best." I stared at him. We had never agreed on this name. Never. We had talked about names before, and he brushed me off every time, saying, "We'll decide later." Now, I knew why. He had no intention of letting me decide anything. I clenched my jaw and forced a smile. "Actually," I said, reaching into my purse, "it's already decided." I pulled out an envelope. Velma frowned. "What's that?" I opened it slowly, making sure everyone saw the paper inside. A birth certificate application. I held it up, letting the name at the top catch the light. Tobias Elijah. My baby's real name. Velma's face went pale. The room was so quiet I could hear the soft hum of the chandelier. You can't do that," she sputtered. I tilted my head. "I already did." Victor frowned. "Wait. When?" "2 weeks ago," I said. "I pre-filed it with the hospital. When the baby's born, it's official." Velma's whole body stiffened. No, you don't understand. The baby's name is Montgomery James." I leaned forward. "No, your baby's name was Montgomery James. My baby's name is Tobias Elijah." Her hands curled into fists. "That name isn't ours." I nodded. "Exactly." She turned to Victor. "Fix this." Victor looked like he'd just been smacked in the face with a frying pan. His mouth opened and closed a few times before he finally spoke. Why would you go behind our backs like this?" I almost laughed. "You mean the way you went behind mine?" Velma was shaking with rage. "You had no right." "I'm his mother," I said. "That gives me every right." She turned to Victor again. "She can't do this. Tell her she can't do this." Victor rubbed his temples. "Look, can we just talk about this?" Velma cut him off. "There is nothing to talk about. The family name must continue." That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about control. This wasn't about tradition. This was about money. Velma's father had left a trust fund. The rules were simple. The firstborn male grandchild named Montgomery James would inherit a significant amount of money. She had expected me to fall in line, to name her grandchild something that would benefit her. And I had just blown it all to hell. Velma's breathing was ragged. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to grab the paper out of my hand and set it on fire. "You don't understand what you've done." "Oh, I do," I said. Victor's face was turning red. That money was supposed to set him up for life. I smiled. "He'll be fine without it." Velma's lip curled. "You selfish little..." Liana cleared her throat. "You're embarrassing yourself," she said, her voice cool and sharp. "Sit down." Velma turned to her, eyes full of fury. "Excuse me? You're making a scene," Liana said. "People are recording." Velma's head snapped around. Sure enough, several guests had their phones out, cameras pointed right at her. She let out a strangled sound and stormed out, shoving chairs out of her way as she went. Victor followed her. The moment they were gone, the whole room burst into whispers. Liana leaned in. That was the best thing I've ever seen. I exhaled slowly, my hands shaking. I wasn't scared. I wasn't sad. I was free. The fallout hit fast. The baby shower ended in awkward murmurs and nervous glances, people too stunned to say much of anything. Liana drove me home, her hands gripping the wheel like she was holding back from turning around and finishing the job on Velma. "You okay?" she asked. I stared out the window. I don't know, because I wasn't sure what came next. Velma wasn't the type to back down. Neither was Victor. This was far from over. I found out how far the next morning. I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. All from Victor and his mother. I let them pile up. Then I got the call that forced me to answer. "Hi, honey," my mom said, her voice tight. "Are you okay?" I sat up, heart racing. "Yeah, why?" "Because Velma just called your aunt and told her you're having a nervous breakdown." I squeezed my eyes shut. Of course she did. "She said you've lost control and that the family is very concerned about your ability to make rational decisions," my mom continued. "And, she said she's exploring legal options." I inhaled sharply. Velma was trying to paint me as unfit. I hung up and called Victor. He answered immediately. Finally, he snapped. "We need to talk." "Oh, do we?" I said, swinging my legs out of bed. "You mean about your mother telling people I'm unstable because I won't let her name my baby?" Victor sighed heavily, like I was the problem here. "She's upset. You blindsided her. She blindsided me at my own baby shower. She's just trying to do what's best for our son." "Our son?" I repeated. "You mean her son? That's how she sees him." Victor didn't answer. I pressed my fingers to my temple. "What legal options is she talking about?" He hesitated. "She thinks you're being unreasonable. That you're acting emotionally, not logically. She wants to make sure the baby has the best future possible." "Victor," I said slowly, "are you saying she wants to take me to court?" "She just wants to explore her options," he said, but his voice was too careful, too measured. My blood ran cold. "She's trying to take my baby. She's trying to protect his future," he snapped. "Do you have any idea what you're throwing away?" "That money," I cut him off. "She's not taking him." Silence. Then, softer, he said, "You should reconsider the name." I laughed. I actually laughed. "Reconsider," I said. "You mean give in?" "It's for his benefit. It's for her benefit." Victor exhaled sharply. "You're being stubborn. Are you on her side or mine?" I asked. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I hung up. 2 hours later, a process server knocked on my door. Velma had filed for an emergency court order. She was claiming I was making irrational decisions that could harm the child's financial stability. She was arguing that I was too emotionally compromised to make legal choices for the baby, and she wanted temporary guardianship until the name issue was resolved. She was trying to steal my baby before he was even born. I sat on the floor, shaking, reading the paperwork over and over, like I could somehow change the words if I stared hard enough. Then, I picked up my phone and called a lawyer. I had always known Velma was controlling, but I had underestimated just how far she would go. Sitting on my living room floor, court papers spread out in front of me, I felt my stomach churn. This wasn't just a power move. This was war. My lawyer, Ethan, a no-nonsense man with a calm voice and a sharp mind, read through the papers over the phone. "This is ridiculous," he said. "She has no legal standing. You're the baby's mother, not her." "Then why did a judge even let this get filed?" I asked, gripping my phone tighter. Ethan sighed. "Money. Influence. Some judges will allow almost anything if the petitioner has the right connections." Of course. Velma had spent years making friends in high places. Her husband, before he passed, had worked closely with half the legal firms in the state. She had influence. She was using it. "They're requesting an emergency hearing," Ethan continued. "You'll need to be there." My stomach clenched. "She's really trying to take my baby." "She won't win," Ethan said. "But we need to prepare. Because she's not just going to stop here." I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how I had ended up here. Less than 24 hours ago, I was at my baby shower, eating cake and unwrapping presents. Now I was about to step into a courtroom, fighting for a baby who hadn't even been born yet. The next morning, I walked into court with Ethan by my side. I expected Velma to look smug. She didn't. She looked furious. She sat beside Victor, whispering something in his ear. He nodded but wouldn't look at me. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, skimmed over the case file. Then she looked at Velma. "You're claiming the mother is unfit because she chose a different baby name than you wanted?" Velma straightened. "No, Your Honor, I'm claiming she is making emotionally driven decisions that could negatively impact the child's future." "And you believe that means she shouldn't have legal custody of her own child?" "She needs guidance." The judge's eyebrow twitched. "And you believe you should provide it?" Velma lifted her chin. Yes. The judge turned to Ethan. Counselor. Ethan stood. My client is an independent adult who has not been found unfit in any way. She has a stable job, a home, and no criminal record. This case is nothing more than an attempt at coercion. The judge looked back at Velma. This is a name dispute, not an issue of parental fitness. Velma's mouth pressed into a tight line. Your Honor, this isn't just about a name. There is a family trust. The judge held up a hand. I don't care about your family trust. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. Petition denied, the judge said. A cold, heavy silence settled over the room. Velma was frozen, like she couldn't believe she had actually lost. Victor's jaw was clenched so tightly it looked like his teeth might crack. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next day, my bank account was frozen. I found out when I tried to buy groceries. My card declined. Twice. Confused, I called the bank. We received a fraud alert on your account, the representative said. A family member reported suspicious activity. My blood ran cold. Who? The woman hesitated. It was your husband. I gripped the phone tighter. What did he tell you? He claimed there were unauthorized withdrawals and requested a freeze for investigation. He was cutting me off. I drove straight to the bank, heart pounding. The manager, a man in his 50s with kind eyes, pulled up my account. Your husband is listed as a co-owner, he said. He had the right to request a hold. I swallowed hard. How long will it take to unfreeze it? A few weeks. I clenched my fists. I didn't have weeks. I had a baby due in 2 months. I had bills. I had medical expenses. I left the bank shaking with rage. Victor had made his choice. He wasn't just siding with his mother. He was actively trying to destroy me. I called Ethan. We need to move fast, I said. I want a divorce. He didn't hesitate. On it. Then I called Victor. He answered, voice flat. What? You froze my account. You did this to yourself, he said. You made this ugly. I laughed, sharp and humorless. I made this ugly? You let your mother file for custody of our unborn baby because I wouldn't let her name him. Victor sighed. She's just trying to do what's best for everyone. I gritted my teeth. You're pathetic. His voice turned cold. You think you've won? You think this is over? Oh no, I said. This isn't over. Not even close. Then I hung up and started making my own plans. Because if Velma and Victor wanted a war, I was going to give them one. I wasn't going to let them win. Victor and Velma had played dirty. They tried to take my baby before he was even born. They tried to control my life, cut me off financially, and manipulate the law to their advantage. But they underestimated me. I wasn't backing down. The next few weeks were a blur of legal paperwork, phone calls, and quiet, seething rage. Ethan moved fast. He filed for an immediate separation, demanded sole custody, and began untying Victor's name from our joint accounts. The process was messy, expensive, and exhausting, but I didn't care. Then I got the phone call that changed everything. Liana's voice was sharp. Are you sitting down? No, sit. I sat. She took a breath. Victor's been having an affair. For a second, my brain refused to process the words. What? She sent me a photo. A grainy shot taken outside a high-end restaurant. Victor, holding hands with a woman. She was younger, mid-20s, sleek blonde hair, perfect makeup. The kind of woman Velma would love as a daughter-in-law. Her name was Claudia, and she was 6 months pregnant. I dropped my phone. Liana kept talking. They've been together for a year. She's due right before you. And guess what? I barely managed to whisper what. She's naming the baby Montgomery James. My stomach twisted. My hands went numb. It had never been about our baby. Victor and Velma never cared about my son. They just wanted the first grandson born into the family to carry the name. The trust fund. The money. The legacy. They wanted to replace me. They already had. I didn't cry. Not at first. I felt hollow, weightless, like I had stepped outside my body and was watching someone else's life fall apart. Then I felt it, the rage. A hot, blistering fury that burned away every last piece of doubt or heartbreak. I wasn't going to confront Victor over the phone. No, this deserved an audience. So I waited. It was Victor's birthday. I knew exactly where they'd be, at Velma's house, celebrating with their polished, perfect guests. The ones who would whisper behind my back and smile to my face. I dressed carefully, simple, elegant, composed. Not like a woman scorned. Like a woman in control. Then I drove to Velma's house, walked straight through the front door, and stepped into the middle of the party. Conversation stopped. Glasses paused midair. Every single person turned to look at me. Velma's eyes narrowed. What are you doing here? Victor was standing by the fireplace, drink in hand. He looked annoyed, not guilty. Claudia stood beside him, a delicate hand resting on her very visible bump. I smiled, slow and sharp. I wanted to wish my husband a happy birthday. Velma scoffed. We're in the middle of a private gathering. Oh, I know. I took a step closer, lowering my voice just enough to draw them in. I just wanted to personally congratulate Victor on his upcoming baby. The room collectively inhaled. Claudia stiffened. Victor's jaw tightened. Velma's face darkened. I tilted my head. You didn't think I'd find out? About your perfect little heir? Velma stepped forward, voice dripping with fake concern. Darling, I know this must be difficult. I held up a hand. Shut up, Velma. Gasps. Someone choked on their wine. Velma's face twisted. How dare you? I dare, I said, voice like steel, because you're a snake. You both are. My eyes snapped to Victor. How long were you going to keep this up? Until she gave birth? Until after the divorce, when you'd pretend to be the heartbroken husband and let Velma spread stories about how I ran off with our baby. Victor's lips pressed into a thin line. This isn't the place, so I think it is. I turned, addressing the entire room. Victor and Velma tried to steal my child before he was even born. They filed court orders, froze my money, spread lies about my mental health. And now this? I gestured to Claudia. You really thought I'd walk away quietly? Claudia shifted, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't know he was still with you. I laughed, cold and sharp. Oh, honey, he wasn't. Not really. He was with her. I pointed to Velma. He's been married to her since birth. Velma's face was a mask of rage. You ungrateful little... I cut her off. You lost. You don't get my son. You get this one. I nodded at Claudia's stomach. Good luck with that. Then I pulled out the final nail in the coffin. A manila envelope. I was going to hand-deliver this, I said, shaking it lightly. But since we're all here... I opened it and let the divorce papers fall onto the table. Velma paled. Victor's eyes widened. I turned on my heel, walking toward the door. Just before stepping out, I glanced over my shoulder. Oh, and Velma? I smiled. You can keep the name Montgomery James. But Tobias Elijah? He's going to be 10 times the man any of you will ever be. Then I left. Velma tried to salvage her reputation. She tried to spin the story, tried to frame me as unhinged, but the damage was done. Too many people had seen. Too many people had heard. Victor didn't even fight the divorce. He just signed. Maybe he thought he could make his new life with Claudia easier. Maybe he thought if he let me go quietly, I'd take the humiliation with me. He was wrong. I fought for full custody. I won. Claudia? She had her baby. A boy. Montgomery James. But Velma wasn't nearly as involved as she had planned to be. Because as soon as the baby was born, Claudia realized exactly what she had signed up for: constant judgment, control, a mother-in-law who saw the baby as hers. She left Victor 6 months later. Velma got what she wanted. But not in the way she thought she would. And me? I raised my son. Tobias Elijah. My child. My choice. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was free.